Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ahead of the Chains. I'm here with my favorite co-host, Patrick Cipher. He might be my favorite co-host by default, but I promise he would still be number one if we had a plethora of co-hosts. Today, we're here to talk about a lot of off-season news going on, right? People say that this is the dead point of the NFL season, after the Super Bowl, before free agency. But the league is relevant 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. They always have stuff going on. There's always storylines to talk about. There's always players getting cut, which we'll talk about in just a second. We have a packed episode for you guys. We have a lot of analysis to give. We have a lot of predictions to make. We have a lot of information to share with the masses. I think really that's the goal, right? Is just to share our plethora of ball knowledge with you guys. Before we get into it, how are you doing today, Patrick?
I'm good. I'm good. The Dolphins, you have that Tua jersey back
I
there.
do.
We're gonna have a
I do.
fun conversation about
and
him
and I, and I got to
specifically.
defend myself because I knew that this was going to be brought up. Okay, I'm a diehard Alabama football fan. Okay, so number one, roll tide. Number two, there was the whole tank for Tua thing going on that year. I was like, man, this guy's going to be special because pre-hip injury, Alabama Tua was a special quarterback, and I will never let people forget that. Okay, so I bought that right after the draft. And, it's kind of been like a sore thumb in my room. Like, even my girlfriend's like, who's Tonga Vailoa? I'm like, babe, you don't understand. You don't get prime Alabama to a Tonga Vailoa. And, now it's kind of like a grave site on my wall. But I wanted to defend myself because I knew you were going to bring that up. I literally knew as soon as I turned the camera on.
Yeah. So we are going to talk about him a little bit later in the show. The Dolphins as a whole, they nuked their entire operation. It seems that's a discussion that we're going to get into very shortly. But just to tell you a little bit more about what we want to hit on later on, just a little bit of a preview, we want to talk about some of the free agency rumors because I think there's really just 1 week where like there's not much, and that 1 week's over. Now we're getting news, right?
Hmm.
Franchise tag rumors, certain guys supposedly hitting free agency they wouldn't expect to hit free agency. And we still haven't had a chance to talk about the coordinators. So at the top of this show, we're going to discuss some of our favorite hires right there. But like you said, packed episode
Hmm.
here. Combine coming up.
Yeah.
Scouting. I don't know where you are in your process. I'll admit I am behind where I usually am at this point. But I mean, how's your process been so far? Anyone specific popping off to you? Of course, this isn't a scouting show yet.
Yeah, no, I'm a little behind as well, and I think I'm still, riding high off the Seahawks winning the Super Bowl. But I think what sticks, not to get into a full conversation, but just like, dude, the quarterbacks, I'm not even as high on Fernando Mendoza as a lot of people. Certainly, I'm not, and I just said I was an Alabama fan. I am not in love at all with Ty Simpson. To me, that's like the early thing that's just like, ugh, ugh. Quarterbacks, man, that's kind of gross this year. It reminds me of like
Oh,
2022 when Kenny Pickett was the belle of the ball.
yeah, and now we
To be clear,
have
Mendoza's better than Kenny Pickett. To be
yep.
clear, but
But now we have a year where another quarterback from that draft class, Malik Willis, hitting free
hmm
agency, and suddenly he's the top free agent name in football. The Dolphins are a team that supposedly should be looking at him. A lot of people are saying because of the history of a lot of those executives, they might make a move to bring in a Malik Willis, right? Their
yeah,
entire operation nuked front to
yeah,
back,
oh yeah.
right? We saw Tyreek Hill leave. We saw Bradley Chubb leave.
There's
What
rumors
do
that
you make?
Minka Fitzpatrick is going to get traded
Yeah,
now.
supposedly, like
Yeah,
we saw a rumor from Jordan Schultz about that. I mean, everything about that team is going in a different direction. But
yeah,
I wouldn't say it's a bad thing, right? This is a team that should be embracing the rebuild. No,
yeah. I think the worst thing that you could be is like have your toes kind of in the water, and you're like, I don't know, should we really cut this guy? The Dolphins are just like, we're blowing the whole thing up, point blank. Period. New coach, new GM. They came in immediately, said, "You're cut, you're cut, you're cut. We're probably going to cut you," referencing Tua, and we're probably going to trade you, referencing guys like Mika Fitzpatrick. I respect it, man. I respect embracing the rebuild, embracing a new identity. The identity of the Miami Dolphins of the last few years was not getting it done. They were never ever contenders. They were never ever a threat in the AFC. They were a team that maybe was going to win 9 or 10 games and maybe lose in the wild card round. But to really put your new identity in this team to say, hey, what we're doing, these contracts are our arbitrage. We are not going forward with this. We are tearing it down to the studs and we're starting new. I respect it. I wish more teams did this, understanding the position that they're in. Obviously, I think you need an owner who kind of gives it the green light. And I'm not going to say that Stephen Ross is a good owner by any means, but at least in this case, he I guess gave his guys the freedom to do what was right. So I love it when teams do this. I think it's best for the future, and it's obviously it's shocking. It's like, oh my gosh, Tyreek and Chubb and all of these guys, but it's the right thing to do. I think that they are now on the long road to contention. They're back on that road.
Yeah, I'm with you in the sense of you're not a good team. You shouldn't be keeping around a guy like Tyreek Hill, right? Let alone his off the field stuff, right? Let alone whether or not he actually wants to be there. It's an aging receiver that depends on his physical ability coming off of an ACL tear. He doesn't fit their current plans. He doesn't. And by releasing him, they saved $23 million of cap space. Now, of course, you wanted to try and trade him, but I don't really think there was a legitimate market because of all the stuff that we just mentioned. No one was going to trade for that contract, considering it. Again, it's Tyreek Hill, a speed dependent player coming off of a major injury to the lower body. It's easy to be concerned about that. I completely understand how they weren't able to trade him. Bradley Chubb, on the other hand, though, there's no reason he shouldn't have been bouncing at the deadline, right? There's no reason that he should already be, I don't know, an Eagle or wherever he would have got traded to. There's no reason he should have been on the team still. If you weren't going to stick with him, he should have got moved at the deadline.
Well, and I think that that's a case of the old regime and the new regime having different plans. I think if this was the same regime, obviously we
Yeah,
could
of
be
course.
asking that question. But the new regime coming in can't really answer for the lack of Bradley Chubb. Now, the old regime definitely should have traded Bradley Chubb. Like, they should have had the foresight to know that they're not an elite team, whatever, whatever. But again, this new team, they're kind of like, hey, uh, at this point, maybe it was a little late. Tyreek, I agree, was kind of untradeable given the contract, given the injury. I mean, people forget like he didn't just tear his ACL; he tore his like ACL, PCL. His leg was like sideways. Like it was a really ugly injury for a receiver that's gonna be in his 30s, who's relying on his speed. Let's also not forget to mention all the off the field issues that Tyreek Hill has dealt with. Don't have to get into details. We'd probably get kicked off YouTube if we got into details, but this is not a surefire bet in Tyreek Hill. This is not the 2020 version of Tyreek Hill, a guy that was going to give you 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns with Mahomes. This is a guy now who is having to battle a lot of adversity to get back to even be a percentage of the player that he once was. So I don't necessarily think that Tyreek getting cut is surprising. I don't necessarily think that the Dolphins not wanting to maintain that contract is surprising. You can look at there are some teams that maybe are a fit for Tyreek Hill, but obviously it'll be at a much lower price. It'll be at a I don't want to say vet minimum, but it'll be at a vet close to vet minimum deal. I think there's too many red flags with Tyreek Hill right now. But that is not to say that there aren't any teams that could potentially use his, which
Yeah.
I know that we can talk about. But Bradley Chubb, I do put that a lot more on the old regime rather than the new regime because maybe now it's a little late.
Yeah. But before we continue with Bradley Chubb, I do want to ask you specific teams with Tyreek Hill. Who do you look at? What do you think would be a good fit? Again, he's a free agent. He is not waiting for the
Yeah,
league year to start. Any team can sign him. We could, be talking right now and get an alert on our phone. Our
right.
phone blows up. Tyreek Hill reunited with Mahomes in Kansas City or something. Who knows? It can happen any given moment, any second of any day now.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill could sign with a new team. I don't think that's as impactful as the headlines might make it seem currently. But what teams do you think might target a guy like Tyreek Hill?
So you mentioned the obvious, Kansas City. Like, let's put the dots together. It's not hard. I think a couple other teams that make a lot of sense to me. One team would be in that own division, the Los Angeles Chargers. Obviously, we talk about Mike McDaniel going over there. He's a guy who clearly loved Tyreek. I mean, he traded a king's ransom to get him. I think the fit with Tyreek in Miami was, I mean, this wasn't a disaster trade. He was a very productive player for them. I don't think that the quarterback matched the skill set of the receiver in this instance. Tyreek Hill is a guy that's going to burn you over the top. Tua does not have the arm strength to consistently hit those deep shots, right? But I think a quarterback like Justin Herbert certainly has a strong arm. I mean, not to right? But Justin Herbert is, I think, one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL. Certainly has one of the strongest arms in the NFL. And to imagine the deep shots that he could throw to Tyreek Hill in those like powder blue uniforms, I mean that should really light the fire under you. You know what? If you're a Chargers fan, I'm trying to be very, trying to not be very uh,
Profane.
profane,
Yeah.
inappropriate. You guys are tracking the analogies I'm giving, though, right?
You're a new man. You're a new man.
I am a new man, right? I'm a new man. I'm
You're
trying to get monetized on YouTube. Money changes you. Money does change you. I am a
well,
sellout. You know,
and here's the thing we have to keep in mind. Tyreek Hill kind of is too, right? As fun as it
there
would
you
be to
go.
see him go to the Chargers, as
There you
fun
go.
as it is to see him potentially go to Kansas City, the money talks. And that's why it wouldn't be flashy at all. I could see Tyreek Hill being a Tennessee Titan. I
Oh,
really could. It would be I think, terrible move. Terrible move.
yeah,
But the Titans have more than enough money to spend. And in all fairness, we did see just last year, Stephon Diggs coming off a major injury. He really established himself as a standout
yeah.
player
He was
for the
productive for a
Patriots
young
after
quarterback.
signing a
Yep.
big contract in free
Hmm.
agency
Yeah.
with the second-year quarterback. So
Yeah.
maybe we see some inspiration. The NFL is a copycat league. Normally, teams see one team do one thing and they try and copy it. This could be the Titans trying to get their Stephon Diggs.
You run me the Titans, and I'll run you who my backup team was, which was the New York Giants. Outside of Malik Neighbors, do the Giants have Wandale
You
Robinson's a
just
free
have
agent?
three of the same skill. Wandale's a free agent. You're right.
Wandale's a free agent. Let's keep that in mind.
Yep.
You want to talk about a guy in Tyreek Hill who, I don't want to say he's full of himself, but he nicknamed himself the Cheetah, right? And then everybody caught on behind that. A guy who obviously would love to, I think, be in a big media market like New York. I think New York would be able to give him a comparable contract. And you talk about a guy going with Cam Ward. Maybe he likes Jackson Dart. Maybe he sees a little bit of Mahomes in Jackson Dart. I think that would be, worse analysis. That worse analysis than like the Raiders have had over the last several years. But I do think that the Giants would be a very desirable location for, or the Tyreek Hill would be a very desirable free agent for the Giants. Again, am I predicting it? Not necessarily, but if you're going to run me the Titans, I'll run you the Giants right back.
I could. There's a part of me that could see New York. There's also the part that says I'd be surprised if they choose to go with an aging receiver, especially Tyreek Hill. His skill set is very similar to Malik Neighbors, very similar. And then all of a sudden, you have two receivers that you're banking on coming back from injury and playing very well for you, right? And maybe there's a part of you that says, we take that bet twice, one of the two will hit. But then there's also the part that's like, okay, what if neither of which work, right? I think they're going to go with a more, if they do go with a veteran, they're going to go more guaranteed type of guy as opposed to kind of the gamble that is Tyreek Hill at the moment. There's a lot of teams. That's the thing about wide receivers. Pretty much any wide receiver that hits the market could go anywhere because you could always, there's no such thing as enough receivers. There's no such thing as enough defensive linemen. Those are the two positions where a guy hits the market, there's going to be a bunch of teams all over them. Again, I think the Chiefs, a lot of people have mentioned them as if they're a no brainer. I don't really think so. I think there's a reason they traded him away last time. It costs a lot of money. They're not in a great money spot. Yeah, they
Dude,
restructured
they're
Patrick Mahomes.
still negative 11 under the cap
Yeah,
after restructuring Mahomes.
yeah.
So, I
And
mean,
again, if
I'm
we expect it to be Tyreek Hill chasing the bag, which I think it is, I don't think the Chiefs are a team that could pay up, and I don't think they want to either.
yeah, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know Tyreek personally, but if I'm
Lucky
Tyreek, I'm
guy.
saying, yeah,
That's not a bad thing.
right, yeah, yeah. It doesn't sound like it, right? Um, if I'm Tyreek, I would say to myself, you've made your money. Like you left the Chiefs, or you were forced away from the Chiefs because you wanted a big new shiny contract. You got your money, you got paid. You lived in Miami for 3 years, whatever. At this point in Tyreek Hill's career, I would be saying I want legacy. So I would sign with the Chiefs for vet minimum for give me $1 million a year, right? And the Chiefs, if it's something like that, could make it work, I'm sure, because the cap is just a lie and everybody knows that. But to give him a big contract, I think is out of the question for Kansas City. But, it sounds like they're getting the band back together, right? Travis Kelce's coming back, and they got Eric Bieniemy, and they're going to get Tyreek Hill, and, Alex Smith is going to go back him up next year. Like, it sounds like they're kind of trying to replicate, English is hard, replicate that Chiefs early 2020s magic, late 2010s, right? So, again, my prediction would be boring and be the Chiefs. But again, it would have to be close to like a vet minimum deal where they're saying, "Hey, Tyreek, you got a lot to prove. You are here to add to your legacy, not to make any more money." Really, that's my kind of 2 cents on that.
And we talk so much about Tyreek Hill, but I think now we should talk about maybe the best player on the Dolphins from last year, Minka Fitzpatrick.
Mm-hmm.
Supposedly, at least rumored to be traded real soon. I mean, do you like the idea of moving on from a guy like Minka for the Dolphins? I say yes, just because you're trying to get younger as
Yeah.
a team.
Oh
You
yeah.
need valuable assets, right?
Yeah.
And then two, what team do you think picks up the phone and is willing to give up the most to get him?
Ooh, that's tough because safety, I think, is still seen by a lot of teams as a luxury position, right?
It
I
depends on the
think,
type of safety.
and that's what
Yes.
that's what I was getting to say. Like, I think some safeties, like a Niki Menwari, like we're seeing with a Caleb Downs coming into the draft, can
Mhm.
completely change your defense. But you have to have the right defensive structure in place. You have to have a coach that's able to maximize that player, use them correctly with their skill set, with their experience. Guy like Micah Fitzpatrick, been there, done that, seen everything right. So I think when you look at a team who needs a safety, who's probably willing to give up, I would say what would get done, a third, a fourth.
I think it would be a third. I do
Yeah, a
because
third would get it done.
I think on one hand it's a matter of, oh yeah, they actively said they're going to trade him, so the price is going to be lower. But at
Hmm.
the same time, there's going to be a bidding war. There's going to be
Yeah,
multiple teams trying to get him.
yeah.
I imagine.
The first team that sticks out to me, and maybe this is just my own intuition, and maybe this is just like my gut, more of a gut reaction than it is like a well researched, prediction. I look at the Washington Commanders. I do
Ooh,
think that they would be a team that could be in the Minka Fitzpatrick
that would help him.
sweepstakes. Again, defensive coach, a guy who obviously has a great history with safeties, right? Where obviously he was there with the Legion of Boom. We're also forgetting the Keanu Neal years in Atlanta, some of the best of his career. So I look at a team like the Commanders, who is going to try to add some firepower to this team this offseason. Again, that's a team that just immediately sticks out to me. Obviously, a team like the Bears is interesting because all of their DBs basically are free agents. Brisker and Byard, Kyler Gordon. I know I'm not saying he's going to play corner. I'm just saying in general their DB room's getting thin.
Well, and
So
Kevin Byard's supposed to be out. Like they need to replace a safety, a veteran
yeah,
safety there.
they
Which
they got a good discount on Kevin Byard a couple years ago, and he far exceeded that contract. I highly doubt that he's going to re up for another below
exactly.
market deal.
I agree.
He's
I
going
think
to
he's
cash
going to
in.
try and cash off
Yeah,
all those
and he
interceptions.
should. I mean, he's an older player. I think he's
Exactly.
32 now.
But I think I like all the teams you've mentioned because the thing about Minka is you mentioned Nick Emenwari, and I think
Yeah.
Brian Branch is a great example of it.
Mm-hmm.
There are some safeties that go down and play in the box. That is not what Fitzpatrick is. Like he
No,
can do it, but it's not
he's a free safety. He's a
he's a
center
free safety.
fielder.
He's a
Yeah.
high
Yeah.
safety. That's
Exactly.
what he is, right?
Exactly.
And the best teams are going to keep him in that role. I think every team you named would do that. I do want to mention the team. I think it would be a very funny story if you just look at the path of his career if this does happen, but I do think it's a very likely reality. Pittsburgh makes a
That'd be
move,
so
brings him
fun.
back. I think so. I really think they would do it
He's just like the
because
perfect ex girlfriend. Every team that ever traded him wanted him back.
exactly right. But it's not like they traded Minka because they didn't want to keep him around. They
Yeah.
traded Minka because they wanted to bring in a guy like Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah.
Now you
And
might
Johnny
be able to get
Smith.
both. And I think
Don't
last
forget.
year, yes, and John Smith.
Yeah.
But I think last year you learned like how much he was hiding.
Yeah.
This team looked very vulnerable on the back end without Minka
Hmm.
Fitzpatrick. I think they learned their lesson, right? I think this is Homer Simpson calling Marge back and trying to get her back in the house. Realizing how much of a crapshoot this secondary is without him, and I think that's the move we're going to see Pittsburgh make. I really
Yeah.
do. I think they need to bring in something. And what do the Steelers do? They don't like to explore the unknown. They're very scared of that. Instead,
They
they're
are.
going to go with what they already know.
And we talked about it last episode. That sounds like it's the theme of the offseason for the Steelers. Is just bringing back their guys from a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Like, just bring guys back. Call Mike Wallace. See what he's up to today. You know what I'm saying? Like, just call guys like that. Bring them all back. I don't know that Steelers fans would be as enthralled with that as they probably should be. I think Minka Fitzpatrick's a good player, but the optics of that I think are not great for the Steelers.
No, they're
Bring him
not.
back
They're
again.
not. But
Yeah,
Minka
yeah,
is a very good player. And again, I think it's a very likely reality that they go ahead and do that.
yeah,
They have to figure out their quarterback situation, right?
yeah,
The
yeah. They do.
Dolphins honestly don't seem to care much about their quarterback situation. They care more about getting rid of their quarterback than they do about bringing a guy in.
Yeah,
They find themselves in an interesting spot right now. Before we talk about Tua and his market, what team might make a move for him, whether or not he'll get traded, maybe he'll get cut instead. From the Dolphins' perspective, there is no debate you move on at this point. Yes.
you try to.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Try.
tried
You're right.
like
It has to be an effort. You can't just do
there.
it. It's not just a
Well,
button press.
this to me is a very similar situation to like Brock Osweiler years ago, where it's like you can't really cut him. It's a lot, or you do what the Broncos did a couple years ago with Russell Wilson, and you just say, "This is a huge dead cap hit. We're just going to eat it. We're not going to be competitive this year. We're not going to be competitive next year. We're just going to eat the dead cap hit and just swallow it and just move on." Um, I think the goal for the Dolphins right now would be to make a Brock Osweiler type deal because you're not going to get anything of value for Tua. You're not. Like, I'm sorry. Not with that contract. So maybe you throw Tua and a mid round pick, try to get a mid round pick back, like something like that. But there is no market for Tua. There is no option for the Dolphins, I think, right now, other than swallow the money, just take the L, let it hurt your books for a year, or again try to make like a Brock Osweiler type trade where you're giving up Tua and something of value for the rights to get that contract off the books.
Now, Tua available on the market. We don't know if it's going to be by trade. We don't know what it's going to be by. But he will be available for teams to add. I am with you in the sense of there's no way the Dolphins bring the guy back, even as like a quarterback competition. The question now becomes what role can Tua play for a team? Is he a bridge guy or is he a legitimate guy that you want to think about starting? Can he still be a franchise guy? Maybe he could be a Sam Darnold story. I'll be entirely honest. I don't think that's a possibility. I really don't. Now, again, he was drafted high for a reason. He's a very precise passer, very accurate, but he doesn't have the upside that you had in the Sam Darnold. He doesn't have the upside that you'd even have in a Mac Jones, right? Tua is very lackluster in some of the physical aspects of the sport. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. He isn't some superb leader. Again, he operates the West Coast timing based system very well because he's so accurate and because of how good he is at timing his throws. But you still have to have a very limited offense with that guy in the game, not to mention the inconsistent availability of him. I think it's really difficult to convince yourself. I think it would take a lot of gaslighting to convince yourself that he could legitimately be a high upside ad for you and anything more than a bridge quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, all of the things that Tua does well is he processes well. He processes well for his first couple reads, and then when the play breaks down, you have no after play ability to get anything positive. His arm strength, we can all agree, is bottom 5 percentile in the league, right? He's not a good athlete. He's not able to run around and like the Justin Fields effect, where it's like, yeah, 90% of the time he's horrible, 10% of the time he makes the greatest play you've ever seen in your life, and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy is destined to be, Lamar Jackson. Tua to me is a sad story because I believe in the guy that I saw at Alabama. I do. I think that guy was a legitimately awesome quarterback, and ever since that hip injury, again, we're talking about a guy who was a good athlete, no longer is a good athlete. All of the injuries that he sustained, especially the concussions, like that's a major, major, major hindrance, I think, on his long-term ability. Who knows? Maybe it's one more concussion, maybe it's two. You never know. Head injuries are very, very scary, as we know. Again, not an athlete, not a strong arm guy, not a guy with, his calling card would probably be the accuracy in the short to intermediate areas of the field. And I hate to sound mean when I say this, but it's like, okay, a lot of quarterbacks have that. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a like, oh my gosh, Tua is the best in the game. He's the only guy that has this, blah, blah. No, like other quarterbacks have that. So there really is no, and I sound so mean when I say this, there really is no upside to a guy like Tua. I think
No,
Mike McDaniel
there isn't.
I think Mike McDaniel got everything out of him that they possibly could have. And it just, to me, is not a situation that the Dolphins would be in. I did not understand why they extended him. I was like, why are you doing that? That makes zero sense to me. The Miami Dolphins took him obviously over Justin Herbert. We all know how that went down. They also took him over Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts. This is a guy again. This is a guy who was so hyped coming out of Alabama, was so ready to take the league by storm, and it's never really all clicked. Combine that with the fact that again they gave him an arbitrage contract, and I think another underrated storyline about this whole Tua situation is his public beef with Brian Flores. Brian Flores obviously was the Miami Dolphins coach his rookie year. They had a very not private feud with each other. And, Mike McDaniel comes in and it's like, at first it was like, oh my gosh, Brian Flores was so mean. This is like, how could he say this? Mike McDaniel wrapped his arm around him and Tua played the best football of his career for a couple of seasons. And now you look back and you're like, maybe Brian Flores was right. Maybe this was a situation where he was right. I don't know that you should ever really, berate your potential franchise quarterback. So maybe that was a step too far. But he wasn't wrong in his analysis. Tua was not the guy. Tua's never been the guy as an NFL player. And it's a sad state to see that the Dolphins are now trying to offload him. Like I said a few minutes ago, maybe having to give something up just to offload him in his contract.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about what a trade might look like very shortly. But I think the biggest thing with Tua, too, is even if you do bring him in as a bridge guy, which I think we agree that would be the role that he plays as a quarterback, right? Even if you bring him in to do that, well, if you have to pander your offense to your quarterback, who you're acknowledging is a bridge guy, that limits your ability to truly evaluate the rest of the offense.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing I always say with like a Jacoby Brissett, right? Yeah, Brissett is not some franchise guy for you, but you could put Jacoby Brissett in any offense and you could still get a good evaluation of the players around the quarterback. You could still understand, hey, this guy, Wilson on the Cardinals is unbelievable, right? And we learned that by watching a fine quarterback throw him the football.
Yeah.
Right?
You know what Jacoby Brissett is? You know what he is? He's American cheese. You could put American cheese on a lot of things. American cheese is never the star of the show necessarily, right? There's fancier cheeses. Never. But American cheese, he just goes on everything. You put him on a burger. You could put him in some mac and cheese. You could put,
and he brings out the best in it.
And he brings out the best in him. Exactly correct. He's never like the star of the show. You
wouldn't know whether or not you really like burgers until you try a cheeseburger.
I really like Michael Wilson. He's what helped me decide that.
And that's exactly what you're getting from Jacoby Brissett.
Yes.
I'm worried if I'm the Jets and I'm trying to evaluate A.D. Mitchell, right? Can I really do that if Tua's throwing him the football?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I really don't. And that's what you're looking for in a bridge quarterback. So in a lot of ways, I can't even trust Tua to be a bridge quarterback. Am I wrong?
No, I don't think you are because, again, you're right. You have to design the offense. It has to be a quick, like you said, West Coast RPO, quick, get the ball out because unlike a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, the longer Tua holds the ball, the more you hold your breath. And you're like, throw it away. Whereas guys like Caleb Williams or Mahomes or Allen or whatever, all of these guys, you're like, oh, the longer they hold the ball, good things are going to happen. With Tua, it's the opposite. It's like, dude, if the ball's not out of your hands in a second and a half, like throw it in the dirt. Like that, there is no good outcome here. So to have an offense,
Garoppolo in a lot of ways, and that's not a good thing.
Oh, dude, Jimmy is such a good comparison. Actually, that is so sad that my
same thing. They're both merchants of their system. And their biggest issue is the second that anything goes a little bit off script, it all falls apart. It all falls apart. People talk about quarterbacks having an internal clock.
Yeah.
He has an internal sundial.
Yeah. He really is Jimmy. He's just Hawaiian Jimmy. That's Hawaiian left-handed Jimmy.
Hawaiian Jimmy with a worse arm.
Yeah. Jimmy's arms ain't great either, but
Tua's is like one of the worst in the past.
So then
decade.
Now Jimmy's in the stage of it. Yeah, it's true. Now Jimmy's in the stage of his career where he's just going to be like a backup forever. Like he's going to just go.
Which that should probably be with what Tua is.
Yeah, which that's what I was going to say. Like Tua is probably entering his Gardner Minshew, going to go be a backup.
Yeah.
Tua would be probably a upper tier backup, I would imagine. If my starting
Uh,
quarterback goes down and Tua, well, if my starting quarterback goes down and Tua comes in for 3 games, I'm like, all right, this guy's been
Depends
a
on the system, I think,
yeah,
a lot.
obviously it
If
depends,
he
but
goes to like, you put him in like Jaden Daniels' Washington system, he's doing
dude,
terrible.
put him in Baltimore. Put him in
But
Baltimore. Have him run read option behind Lamar.
no way.
Trust me, you're not seeing the vision. Okay,
Mm.
he used to run around all the time at Alabama when he had the like dye in his hair and he had like the not the I don't know if they're frosted tips necessarily, but like he had like the frosted top.
Mhm.
Dude, we're getting that Tua back. All right, 2017 Tua is coming back.
Well, genuinely, what teams do you think could be a fit for Tua currently? Like, even if
Uh,
it's not as a starter, even if you just think he competes, because there is one I want to throw out there. Although I do think it's genuinely career suicide if he does it, but I
the
think that's what we're looking at, and I want to float it out
I'm
after you mention
when
one.
I'm thinking about Tua and his possible landing spots, I'm thinking about a team that will be getting rid of their starting quarterback, and be looking for a guy who is we call him a bridge. Maybe he's just a guy who's just like a fill-in episode. Like a lot of your favorite shows, they have just like filler episodes that like don't really matter to the plot. This is going to be a filler season for them. Maybe a team like Arizona, just get a guy. They were throwing out like Tyson Bagent the other day. Just get a guy to start for a year. You're not. But
But
then
again, we
again,
just
why
talked
wouldn't they
about how
just
we
do
don't
that with him?
like him as a bridge.
What?
We just talked about how we don't like him as a bridge
No,
quarterback.
I don't like him as a bridge, but I'm saying like it's not, I'm saying it's not a bridge. It's like just fast forward 2026 and we'll get on to 2020. Maybe like we could accumulate something by getting to us. So I honestly have no idea. Like I don't think
I,
that there is a single
I'll,
team
I'll
that
say
makes
the
most
I'll
sense.
say the one I think about, and I think you're thinking about the wrong logic here. Instead of replacing the next guy, how about someone who can kind of help the next guy develop? I think Fernando Mendoza, Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback competition with the Raiders could be a very real storyline.
So if I'm the Raiders,
Mhm.
why would I get rid of Geno Smith, who's been a veteran, who's been better more recently, and has also, like I said, been in the league longer to mentor Fernando Mendoza and bring in Tua? To me, that's where that disconnect is. It's like if you want a veteran who's gonna mentor Fernando and this, that, whatever, you have that in Geno.
Yeah,
And
okay.
Geno's been better more recently.
Yeah, and that's true, but you also have seen Tua do good things in this league. But you're right. They have their veteran if they were to
Yeah.
keep Geno around. Although at this point, I think you have to get rid of him just because of the appearance of it. How about the Vikings competing with Mike McCarthy?
See, see, I like Minnesota probably. Again, I'm kind of going through like the Rolodex of teams, and I'm like, no, 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 no. The Vikings to me probably make the most sense just because you have to bring in somebody to compete with JJ McCarthy. Like you have to.
Mhm.
And are you going to go the Aaron Rodgers route? Are you like we just talked about? Are you going to go the Geno Smith route? Are you going to try to get Kyler? Like the pickings are kind of slim regardless of what route you go. Maybe you say, hey, Kevin O'Connell, I'm a quarterback guru. I can make the most out of anything. I am the fixer-upper version of NFL head coach, even though he let a guy go and he just won a Super Bowl. But we're gonna not talk about that for a second. Maybe you say that, hey, I want to bring in Tua. I want to light a fire under JJ McCarthy at the very worst, at the very best. Maybe we get something good out of Tua. Um, but I just don't know.
I think I think that the Vikings are the Mac Jones team.
Here's the
So
important
let's say
distinction for me.
someone, yeah,
Is Tua a free agent? Like
that's what I was just
have
about
the
to get to
Dolphins
that.
taken their medicine and cut him, and I could sign him for minimum? Then more teams make sense. Or is
Yeah.
this the Dolphins are going to trade him? I would
Mhm.
need to orchestrate a trade, take on the contract, etc. That's an
Well,
important distinction in my mind.
and that let's get to that, right? I was talking. I do think that Mac Jones would be the Vikings, but if they can't get him, that's when I think that Tua situation becomes way more likely. But talking about whether it's a trade, free agency, let's just talk about his contract right now. Two, 2026, $56 million cap hit. 2027, $53 million cap hit. 2028, we have a $65 million cap hit.
Isn't it like 90 million dead cap this year too?
Oh my God, it's a lot.
Oh
I
my
think it
god.
is very similar to Jared Goff in 2022 or 2020. Sorry. The Rams were able to offload his contract because they hit him in the Stafford trade. They also threw in additional capital to make sure they could get rid of him. Even if they eat some of Tua's cap hit, they're gonna have to give some extra capital, unless they work some magic. Which I highly doubt. A team would have to be very stupid.
Very stupid. Very.
Now, but I talked about the big thing: hiding Jared Goff, who had a very not friendly team contract, as a part of a bigger trade. So we talked about Minka earlier. Do we think Tua could potentially be a part of that Minka Fitzpatrick trade? If Pittsburgh is the team, do we think that those wheels could maybe start moving?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I know. Very loaded question.
No, very
a loaded question that doesn't feel it feels very evil to think about.
Yeah, it does.
Make Steelers fans subject to Tua, who can't throw the ball downfield, after Aaron Rodgers was bottom of the league in air yards per attempt.
Tua and DK Metcalf. My first thought
after having the ghost of Ben Roethlisberger, it's just like you're allergic to deep balls at that point.
The thought of Tua underthrowing DK Metcalf by 15 yards on a fade route, it brings a smile to my, like, that is one of the funniest things. And then DK subsequently going and beating up a fan in the stands. That is one of the funniest, like, potential realities that we have. I don't know, man. I like every Tua team. I could poke holes in every single potential team to go for Tua, and the Steelers. I feel like they're just so addicted to mediocrity that the thought of them going and trying what would be a reclamation project in Tua just doesn't compute.
That's not what it is. Jared Goff wasn't supposed to be a reclamation project.
But they like Jared Goff. The Lions like Jared Goff. Like they made the deal with the Rams over the 49ers because they like Goff over Jimmy G.
No, they wanted the picks. That's why they did it.
But they've talked about, like, one of the deciding factors was Goff or Jimmy.
I think the Steelers would do this to get Minka. And that's the difference. You're doing this trade to get Minka, and it just so happens Tua is a part of it.
I mean, you want to take on a $56 million cap hit to get Minka Fitzpatrick?
They'd probably eat a little bit, but yeah, I do think that
that's what makes it so difficult to me. It's like
they have the money.
Now, let me throw some at you. Okay? And this is where, if John Sullivan calls me and talks me through this is where I get excited. He says we want to give you Tua. I hang up the phone. He calls back. I answer again. He says we want to trade you Tua, but we'll throw in Jalen Waddle. Now I get a little excited because now the acquisition of Jalen Waddle is potentially worth taking on the massive cap hit of Tua.
And Minka isn't?
It's not a premium position one. He's older. Jalen Waddle, a lot of teams need a wide receiver, and we'll talk about that later when we talk about free agents and stuff. A lot of teams need a wide receiver, and Jalen Waddle, I think, has the potential to be really, really good. So if you're saying, hey, we'll give you Jalen Waddle, you got to take on Tua's cap, though.
But the point is, you agree they're probably going to try and hide Tua in a bigger trade.
Yeah, like, if they're going to trade Tua, they're going to try to hide him. Or, like I said, the Brock Osweiler method, where it's like, hey, we'll give you Tua and a third, and we want a seventh back. And it's like you're basically paying for a draft pick at that point.
I'm looking at Waddle's cap hit.
But to me, Waddle is much more attractive of a trade candidate than Fitzpatrick would be. And he is a guy who is likely to get traded, I would imagine. So why not try that?
Waddle, I'm looking at his contract right now. Right now, it's only $11 million. Not anything huge. 2027, he's a $33 million cap hit.
Yeah.
2028, you're looking at a $37 million cap hit.
Yep.
I did not know how much of a cap casualty he was.
Yeah. And again, for a team like Washington, maybe? I keep bringing up Washington.
Because they have all the money that you could throw anyone over.
They do, and they have a good young quarterback, so they might as well be aggressive.
But you could also argue that they're trying to, Washington is the perfect team to just experiment with in so many hypothetical scenarios.
Max Crosby, Trey Hendrickson, Jalen Waddle.
They could either contend or they could take. They could do any of it, and there's valid reason to think so.
Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah. So, I don't know, a receiver needy team. Why not? Why not throw out if you have money and you need a receiver? Maybe. Who knows? But John Sullivan will need to immediately upon arrival in Miami, pull a rabbit out of his hat because that's going to be what's required to trade
They
Tua.
just have to find a way to get rid of him, or maybe they
Yeah,
just keep him on the roster, eat the cap. I don't know, or maybe they cut
I
him
think
and
that
eat
if
the cap. I have no
I think
idea.
maybe they just pull the Russell Wilson method where it's just like, dude, we're cutting you, we're
Yeah,
eating $90 million cap and calling it a day. So we talked about Tua and how he is potentially on the move. Could the Dolphins cut him? Could they trade him? Et cetera, et cetera. Guys that we know are going to be on the move are this upcoming free agent class. Now, this free agent class, I wouldn't say is the most talent-rich free agent class that we've ever seen, but there's a lot of interesting names, a lot of interesting storylines. The Super Bowl MVP is a free agent. How many times have we seen that? Not many. But I think to start off our kind of free agency period, uh, it's important to talk about the franchise tag deadline, right? Couple weeks is the deadline for the franchise tag. Some guys we already know are not getting franchise tag. One of those guys is the aforementioned Super Bowl MVP, Kenneth Walker. Now, the Seahawks came out and leaked it to the media that they are not going to be franchise tagging Kenneth Walker. And to me, that does make a lot of sense. It also is not very surprising. The Seahawks don't normally deploy the franchise tag, while it is relatively expensive given their position. It also is, I think, an annoying thing for the players. It postpones their free agency another year, and perhaps it's out of the kindness of his heart. Maybe it's for the interest of player relations going forward. But the Seahawks do not usually franchise tag individuals. Kenneth Walker sounds like he is no exception. Um, that means that he's going to hit the open market. And to me, Kenneth Walker is one of the more fascinating free agents. I looked up his, market value. It's about $11 million a year. I think I saw on Spot Check it was 3 years, $33 million. Obviously, that seems relatively inexpensive compared to what we pay quarterbacks and what we pay receivers. But $11 million for a running back is obviously a lot of money. Running back is the biggest position in the NFL with a disparity of supply and demand. The logic is always, hey, don't pay your running backs. Go out and draft a guy in the third round. He'll get you 1,000 yards if you have a good offensive line. But I do think that Kenneth Walker is a bit of a different example. I do think that he is a very talented running back in the NFL. Obviously, while he has had some injuries, nothing major. Like he's never tore an ACL, not had an Achilles, something that would scream the end of a running back's career. He's kind of had just some nicks and bruises throughout the years. But I wanted to get your reaction on kind of what your thought is about the Kenneth Walker deadline news because I am a Seahawks fan. Obviously, I want Kenneth Walker back. I can, however, also see the argument for letting him test free agency, and if the number's too high, saying goodbye. But I was just curious kind of what your thoughts are regarding Kenneth Walker and the franchise tag.
I've loved K9 since the day he came out of Michigan State. I have adored him. With that being said, I am like the leader of the don't pay running back crew. I really am. So you could look at this news in one of two ways. You could either say, okay, they're not franchise tagging him. That means he's going to get his long term deal. Or you could look at it the way I do and say, yeah, K9 is very good, very talented running back. But his rookie contract is up. If we pay him and end up doing it long term, that could bite us in the butt. It can. They had one of the worst starters in football on the offensive line, named Anthony Bradford. You could bring in Wyatt Teller potentially to play guard for you if you choose to let K9 walk. You could spend that money building the offensive line, letting that be better. And all of a sudden, you're able to be just as effective on the ground with Zach Charbonnet running the football or maybe some rookie running the football. I think it's pretty easy to hit on running backs in the draft, if I'm being entirely honest. Again, I like K9. He's a really fun player. He's awesome to watch. He's very good. But how much longer will he be that good? I don't know. I think the good teams, they are very cautious about paying running backs. And I don't think Seattle, although they won the Super Bowl, they aren't flawless enough to be paying a running back, in my opinion.
I will add one thing in the pro Seahawks Kenneth Walker bucket. Week 1 next year, your starting running back would be George Alani if Kenneth Walker is not able to come back to Seattle. Zach Charbonnet tore his ACL in the playoffs in January. Obviously, I hope for the best for his recovery. We never know with running backs if an ACL is going to be career ending. Less and less as modern medicine evolves and nutrition and such and such. But I mean, I'm asking this hypothetically. Are you potentially comfortable with George Alani being your starting running back going into week 1? The thought would then be, obviously, if you don't bring back Kenneth Walker, are you going to draft a running back? Which I think they would, but you don't have premium picks. To my knowledge, this is not a great running back draft. So I think if you don't bring back Kenneth Walker, you have to be prepared for the reality where George Olani is your starting running back, the best running back out of Boise State in the NFL. Do not debate me. Another guy who has had a great legacy with his team and would be absolutely heartbreaking for fans to see go would be Mike Evans. Mike Evans is not retiring. He's coming back for another year. Obviously this past year was banged up a lot. Was not able to extend his 1,000-yard streak, which was the most bogus thing in sports, but that's a topic for another day.
Stop.
That's a
You hate
topic for
fun,
another
and that's
day.
coming from me.
That's a topic for another day. Get off my lawn. But Mike Evans is going to explore free agency, and there are some rumblings and there's some inklings that he might not return to Tampa Bay. Obviously, that would be a massive, massive, massive news for Tampa Bay fans. One of, if not the best player in the history of that franchise, has built a great legacy over there.
Chill a little bit with the
okay. The pendulum swung. Now I like Mike Evans too much.
Yeah.
Okay, I can't get it right with Mike Evans.
Exactly. You gotta find the middle ground.
He's top 5. He's top 5.
Yeah, but he's not. He's
not Warren Sapp. I get it.
With
I get
Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks.
I get it. Josh Freeman. I get it. Okay, whatever. But there are, there's a possibility that he is not playing in a Tampa Bay Bucks uniform. And to me, when I look at Mike Evans, I still see a guy who's going to be able to contribute to a high-functioning offense. Please, oh God, do not go to the Jets. Please, oh God, do not go to the Dolphins or the Cardinals or something like that. I do think that Mike Evans is going to go to a contender. I don't think that contender is Tampa Bay. I think we're looking at Mike Evans in a Baltimore Ravens uniform. I do.
I completely agree.
I do. When you look at the receivers that they have on the roster, they lack a. There's not a Mike Evans. There's not a 6'5" jump ball.
After it hits the rim.
Exactly. They would have the most OP red zone offense of all time with Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and Mike Evans. Because pick your poison. Pick your poison. Really. Baltimore Ravens to me make perfect sense. And this is a guy who, if you want to go Mike Evans, I talked about this with Tyreek Hill earlier. Now you've made your money. You get your great grandkids are going to Harvard. Congrats, man. Now it's about adding to your legacy. And I know there was a certain TV personality this week that said Mike Evans never sniffed a Super Bowl in Tampa. Brother, he won the Super Bowl in Tampa, but that's besides the point. If you want to add to that legacy, you go to a team like Baltimore and try to get Lamar Jackson a ring.
I think the biggest thing for Mike Evans, specifically in this offseason, Alec Pierce. That's what's going to affect him because you have a very similar football player. And however much money he gets is going to dictate how much Mike Evans gets. And it might be the other way around if Mike Evans gets signed first. I agree in a lot of senses. Baltimore is 100% the team. If Washington's trying to send a message, that would be cool. If Washington brought in a Mike Evans, they need a guy like him. They do. Him and McLaurin together, I think those are two guys who are similar stylistically, but they're also different in terms of how they do it, right? Both of them are like these deep threats that, are able to go up and jump the 50-50 ball. But I think that Evans is more of the guy that's going to beat zone coverage, right, and settle versus zone. Meanwhile, Terry McLaurin is more of that great route runner that's able to get separation against man coverage. You're really going to have an answer for everything if they choose to take that approach. Also, KC. Kansas City needs a possession guy. If they're able to create the cap space, I mean, that would be a slam dunk. They haven't. When have we ever seen Mahomes, who also might miss a portion of the season? When have we ever seen Mahomes with like a true possession guy? Especially if they lose Tyreek or Travis Kelce to free agency.
Disrespecting Kadarius Toney is crazy, but whatever.
If they lose Travis Kelce to free agency, who's going to be their settle against zone coverage guy?
Yeah, I think that was the plan with DeAndre Hopkins a couple years ago, and it didn't really work out. I think I could be wrong because he's older, but I think Mike Evans does have something left in the tank. We've talked about Mike Evans potentially going to Baltimore. Well, there's another Baltimore pass catcher that has some decisions looming, and that's Isaiah Likely. I thought Isaiah Likely's time in Baltimore ended when they re-signed Mark Andrews to that contract. That was kind of a perplexing deal to me, prioritizing signing Mark Andrews over a guy like Isaiah Likely. Isaiah Likely is a free agent. He is, I would argue, if we're not counting Travis Kelce, if we're assuming that he goes back to Kansas City, probably the second best tight end on the open market. I would probably like him over Dallas Goedert, just given his athleticism. But this is a guy who is going to have some options. You talked a couple of minutes ago about how Mike Evans and Alec Pierce are going to be kind of weighing each other to see, hey, where's the market going? Who gets signed first? That will kind of determine the other guy. To me, that's the situation that Isaiah Likely and Kyle Pitts are in right now. Kyle Pitts is the number one tight end on the open market. How much does he get? Where does he go? I think then we can look at Isaiah Likely as a guy after that who is going to have his options, clarify themselves. Where, okay, New York signed Kyle Pitts, whatever. Now the list of teams is down. I don't know if he goes back to Baltimore. Like I said, I think they prioritize Mark Andrews in that room. There's a lot of teams that could use a tight end. I'll give you one, and I think it's a non-zero chance. What if Travis Kelce isn't a Kansas City Chief next year? Could the Chiefs go with a guy like Isaiah Likely? I think that's interesting.
I didn't think about that.
He's a guy who's hyper athletic, and I think would be very, very fun for a guy like Andy Reid to be able to deploy all over the field. I don't know what your potential landing spots are for Isaiah Likely, but again, I think of a guy who's going to want to be the premium tight end in the offense. I don't think he wants to split. He's not going to the Bears. He's not sitting behind Colson Loveland or any of these guys, right? I think Isaiah Likely wants to be the guy in the offense. There's a potential. There's not a lot of good pass catchers in KC right now, so that's a team I would throw out in the ring as a potential Isaiah Likely suitor.
I want to raise an interesting one to you right here. We know the NFL, like I said earlier, copycat league.
Yep.
And it's something we talked about just last week, right? The rise of these heavy personnel sets. I think there's a very likely chance that
See what you did there?
Oh,
I see what
yeah,
you very likely
chance.
That's
That
good.
was not intentional.
Yeah, those are the best ones that aren't
As
intentional.
much as I would love to take credit for that, I cannot in good conscience. The idea of the 49ers potentially getting their 1-2 punch. George Kittle, of course, we don't really know with him. He can't stay healthy, but when he's healthy, he's awesome. But the idea of when they're at the peak of their powers, a 2 tight end set of Isaiah Likely and George Kittle. Come on.
That is terrifying.
And you know what you could do with tight ends in this league, right? I mean, you saw it firsthand. Watching what Kubiak did with A.J. Barner and Elijah Arroyo. Like, we saw all these guys get out there and perform. We saw, the Rams, the latter half of the season, there were games where they pretty much based out of 13 personnel.
Yeah.
And because I wouldn't just say the 49ers. If we want to go with a younger team, because Isaiah Likely is a younger weapon, here's one that if they just want to overload on weapons, it'd be awesome. The Cardinals. Trey McBride as like that slot type of tight end.
Tight end's the only position they don't need.
but that's you're right.
I get what you're saying.
But if they choose to draft, and maybe this is a guy who will be undervalued a little bit. I think it would be a little bit sacrilegious in terms of team building strategy. I'm with you in that sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, let us have fun. Let us have a little bit of that enjoyment. And you know what? The Rams are looking at $44 million in cap space. Tyler Higbee doesn't have that much longer. Maybe they choose to make that move.
My gosh.
If they want to really stick to the 13 personnel.
That's such a Sean McVay thing to do too. That is such a Sean McVay type of move.
This is my main thing. I just want people to be aware of the possibility that Isaiah Likely was, it sucks. He got a limited role, but when he got the ball, he was a weapon. There's a very likely chance, that time I did it, that we're looking at him playing as the backseat guy once again.
Interesting.
Which I wouldn't love, but I think it is something that we could see again. And although I'm saying I wouldn't love it, I wouldn't love it for Isaiah Likely. I would love it for the offense as a whole, whatever offense that ends up being.
So
I'm just
you
trying to
see him
think.
more as a really high end tight end too, more
No,
than a
it's not even that I see him that way. Like, if let's say a team that had a weak tight end room,
mhm,
uh, went ahead and made a move for him, he could be the feature tight end on an offense,
yeah.
right? Let's say the Jets. I don't think the Jets will be the team to do it because they already have Mason Taylor, who's a young weapon, and I don't think Doug Peterson will buy onto the new wave because he's unk. But let's say the Jets decided, okay, we want to get better guy than Mason Taylor. Isaiah Likely, I think, is genuinely a top 10 tight end. Like, he's a good starting tight end for you. But I do think teams are going to try and ride this wave of heavier personnel. And Isaiah Likely being as good of a tight end as he is, while also being available in free agency, one of these teams are going to try and do that. They're going to try and buy onto the new wave using Isaiah Likely, which is, again, why I throw the 49ers specifically into this discussion.
I'll throw one more at you, and then I'll transition us to our next group of free agents here. I think T.J. Hawkinson is going to get cut. Why wouldn't the Minnesota Vikings try to pick up Isaiah Likely? Get younger at the position. Again, get as much weapons as possible in the building for J.J. McCarthy or Tua, as we just mentioned, Tua maybe. I think the Vikings could be a team that makes sense for Isaiah Likely if they do what I think they're going to do and cut T.J. Hawkinson. But that's neither here nor there. There's a lot of potential landing spots for Isaiah Likely. Speaking of lots of potential landing spots, the entire Cleveland Browns offensive line is a free agent. I don't know that I've ever seen this in my life. Their entire
some of them could
offense.
still get re-signed.
Some of them,
can still
some
get
of them could get re-signed. Sounds like a
But the
couple of
two,
them
yeah,
probably are not.
The two guards are gone. The two guards
Yeah,
are gone.
Wyatt Teller, Joe Patonio sounds like they are likely. See what I did there again? Likely gone from Cleveland. Andrew Barry just absolutely just keeps outdoing himself every single year.
Somehow still employed.
I cannot get enough of Andrew Barry. It is like a 12-year-old
Not
kid who just abandoned his Madden franchise. It's awesome. Every offensive lineman's a free agent. But when we talk about guards, there was this market a couple of years ago for guards, and it was like rambunctious, right? I remember like Damian Lewis, Robert Hunt, these guys. Even last year, Will Fries, ridiculous money. Aaron Banks got paid. Aaron Brooks. Aaron Brooks got a boatload of money. It was guards are, I think, becoming one of those positions we talked about with running backs where the supply and demand is so out of whack in favor of, a multitude of running backs. Guards and really quality interior offensive linemen are the opposite, right? There is not a lot of good ones, and every team needs some. Every team needs two, essentially, right? So I think these guys are going to get paid. You talked about Seattle as a potential team that could use them earlier in the episode, and I'm gonna reinforce that sentiment. If you look at the Super Bowl championship team for Seattle, one position sticks out like a sore thumb. That's right guard. Anthony Bradford. I mean, I saw a clip today, Patrick, legitimately in the Super Bowl. He gets beat by Milton Williams. Kenneth Walker picks him up. He spins around. He blocks Kenneth Walker. Have you seen this? Have you seen this clip?
No, I've seen the film, and I said that's Anthony Bradford.
He spins around, blocks Kenneth Walker, his teammate, by the way, and Super Bowl MVP also, by the way. And then Milton Williams gets an uninvaded path to Sam Darnold. And you're like, oh, that's just a bad play with it. That is like a weekly occurrence with Anthony Bradford. The amount of screenshots on Seahawks Twitter of Anthony Bradford like looking the wrong way, like facing Sam Darnold like he's a defensive lineman are just hilarious. So the Seahawks definitely need to upgrade the offensive guard position. Now, last year they did that in the first round by taking Gray Zabel. Left side is good. He was solid. He was great.
Very.
The difference of this offensive line from last year without Gray Zabel, leaps and bounds better. But they're not done. They still need another guard. I think the Seahawks make sense for one or both of these guys because not only do they have money, but they have a massive, massive need at interior offensive lineman.
Yeah, it's Wyatt Teller's 100% heading free agency. With Batonio, it's weird. He's like on the fringe of retiring.
Yeah.
But he's definitely not playing in Cleveland, is what we know.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
I mean, I wouldn't want to end my career in Cleveland. If you chose to come back for another year, you don't want to stay in Cleveland, Ohio, especially with
That's why Joe Thomas, I've always like thought of Joe Thomas as like the weirdest career ever. It's like this guy was a premium Hall of Fame top 2 every single year left tackle. And he just stayed in Cleveland every year. Like, what? It makes no
It's
sense to
like the
me.
scene from Moneyball.
Yeah.
When they talk about like, oh yeah, this is one of the best pitchers in the in the league.
Yeah.
This is one of the best offensive linemen in the history of the NFL. His deficiency is that he plays for the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, but it's like, dude, I don't know. Like, why didn't he ever just like go to the Steelers or something, get a boatload of money and win a Super Bowl? I don't understand that. It's
yeah,
so funny to me.
it's bad. I mean,
Yeah,
hey, who knows? Maybe Wyatt Teller can do what Joe Thomas never did. Maybe we see Wyatt Teller go to, I don't know, Seattle, and they run it back. Maybe.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
he would help. He would
Well, if you're
help
not going to spend money, like we just said, if we're not going to spend money on Kenneth Walker,
bolster
get
the
that
unit.
offensive line. Yeah,
You
get
got
that
it.
offensive.
You got it.
Yeah, you got to.
No.
Seattle, to me, like again, I try not to be a homer. That they seem like the most obvious team to me for one of these guards.
So now we wrapped up with some of the rumors in free agency. We have the draft coming up. We do. And I am excited to talk about that. But before we do get into those draft heavy episodes, I do want to wrap a bow on the coaching discussions
Hmm.
because we haven't talked about coordinators on this show yet. And there were some coordinator hirings that make me feel a certain way. I'm going to be honest. So I imagine you as an NFL fan feel the same way. So tell me, like, what coordinator hire stands out to you as like, oh yeah, that is what a team should be doing?
Well, dude, I always like the idea of bringing in a guy a year or two before he is like the Ben Johnson, Sean McVay type, where everybody wants to get their hands on him. So I look at a guy like Declan Doyle in Baltimore, a guy who was the tight ends coach in Denver under Sean Payton. Last year was the offensive coordinator in Chicago under Ben Johnson. Obviously, as we know, he did not call the plays last year, but the guy's 29 years old. He's a young guy. And from all accounts, he is really bright. He is, going to burst onto the scene in the next couple of years as being like one of the premier offensive minds in football. Don't be surprised if he's a head coach in a few years. So I think for the Baltimore Ravens to take a chance on him, and obviously his relative inexperience. I mean, he's like the same age as Lamar, right? Never called plays. So I think there's a lot of like very risky things they do. They also have a first year head coach in Jesse Minter. They did a lot of risky things, but I like teams that do that. I like teams that are able to identify young talent early, get on the bandwagon before everybody wants them, right? And obviously, this is a guy you learned under Ben Johnson and Sean Payton, two of the best offensive minds in the game. So to me, Declan Doyle is a coordinator hire that I really like. I think the Ravens are, like they are often as a good organization, on the cutting edge of what the meta is in the NFL, which is getting a young guy before he is, a household name.
Yeah, the Ravens are such an interesting organization because in a league where so many teams feel complacent with the status quo, they are consistently striving to win Super Bowls. And these
Yep.
are the types of moves that make you say exactly that. My favorite thing about Declan Doyle is the fact that he comes from this Ben Johnson offense that isn't just, oh, Ben Johnson's a great offensive coordinator. No, it's a little bit beyond that. We see a lot of offensive coordinators that have their style, and it's always going to be their way. It always has to be how they like it. But Ben Johnson was one of the guys that showed flexibility, which is so important in the NFL. We see a lot of guys, they have their system and they stick to it. They bring in guys that work with their system. And if you have Justin Fields, but you want to run a pass heavy spread offense where you have to go read to read to read, you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Ah, okay. Sorry, I'm good now. No, but you're out of luck if you're going to
yeah,
try and do that as an offense.
yeah.
But
No,
Ben Johnson,
you have to be
and
multiple. I
hold on,
agree.
let me, what?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were done. My fault. I'm gonna write down that timestamp real quick.
Ben Johnson, the thing about him specifically that I've loved is he worked with Jared Goff, who's way more of a structured passer, but then he went over to Chicago and he was operating the complete opposite type of offense with a completely different quarterback. Declan Doyle learned from him, which means you're going to see a lot of that same flexibility. The offense isn't just going to be the Declan Doyle offense with Lamar Jackson in it. It's going to be an offense made for Lamar Jackson to succeed, made for Derrick Henry to succeed, made for all of these guys to become the best version of themselves. And that is why I like Declan Doyle.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree, and I think you talked about the play style differences between Jared Goff and Caleb Williams. Caleb obviously is much more of an athlete, much more of an improviser, and much more of a guy who's going to make things happen with his feet. Well, who's he with now? The best guy to improvise and to make plays with his feet and to extend plays.
Mhm.
Um, and I think there was talk on sports TV this morning where it was like, he called out Lamar Jackson. He said Lamar Jackson needs to be at voluntary OTAs and yada yada yada. And I kind of like that. I kind of like a young guy with a little moxie, a guy who knows what he wants, a guy who has expectations for players. He's not going to be a cowardice. He's not going to be a guy who's timid and scared and whatever. Like I said, I know he's 29, but this is a guy who's seen a lot of football. He's been around a lot of good football. He's been around a lot of good quarterbacks. So I'm excited. I really am excited for what he's going to do in Baltimore this year. And a lot of my Ravens friends who are really plugged in, they're excited as well. There's a lot of optimism there.
Yeah. Now sticking with offensive coordinators because there were so many offensive coordinator
I think there were
hirings.
20.
It is
I think there were
yeah,
20
it's
OC
crazy
hires.
how
Yeah.
many we saw get hired. But Brian Fleury, going to Seattle from the tight
You
end
mean
coach.
Triple H? Yep.
Yeah, going from the tight end coach and run game coordinator in San Francisco to now the OC there.
Hmm.
I think it's going to work really, really well. We know these Shanahanian guys know how to do the job. They know how to operate an offense. Kubiak showed us what works. Now Fleury just has to continue to do that type of thing and create the little revamps, right? Maybe a little bit more motion. That's what I'm excited to see because he's from the more Shanahanian side of things. Maybe some more motion, adding a new wrinkle to the Kubiak offense because that's my most excited thing. I am excited to see what the expansions and the wrinkles of the Kubiak offense start to look like. I think Fleury could be one of the guys that revamp a really nice offense, the new trend in the league. He's going to make it into a whole new thing, a whole different level of it. And we know he's familiar with Sam Darnold. I'm really excited to see how it works, really.
Yeah, I won't lie. Like, I'm a little nervous. Obviously, I love the fact that they're sticking with the Shanahan guy at the Shanahan tree. Obviously, it was a system that was very successful for the Seahawks last year. But this is a guy who's never called plays before. He's been under Kyle Shanahan, and if you have a cup of coffee with Kyle Shanahan, it seems like you're a football genius these days.
Yeah, right.
So there's obviously that. But a guy who has not called plays before, and I'm still scarred by the Ryan Grubb. Now, when I say Ryan Grubb, stylistically totally different. They are both bald guys with beards, though, so PTSD kicks in just a little bit. But the reason I bring up Ryan Grubb is because Ryan Grubb had never called plays at the professional level. And, it was a guy in Kalen DeBoer who was calling a lot of plays at Washington, and his inexperience really was a big thing in 2024. And, there's no way to know whether or not that Brian Fleury is ready to call plays or not. There's a lot of pressure on his shoulders. He's got a Super Bowl winning team, and he's got the Offensive Player of the Year. Like, there is a lot of expectation. There's a lot of requirements for success for this team. And, I'm not going to lie, I am a little nervous. I'm not predicting that he's going to be bad, but with a guy with, no play calling experience at the NFL level, it is a bit worrisome for me. I'm going to completely make myself look like a hypocrite, however, when I talk about my next guy that I'm excited for, who also has no play calling experience in the NFL, and that's David Blau, the new offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders. Again, you think I'm probably a Commanders fan the way I talk about them in every segment about everything, but I do like David Blau as the offensive coordinator. Number one, I talked about this last week. He's emphasized that they want to run a more traditional under center offense. I think that's going to be one of the best things for Jaden Daniels to do. Cliff Kingsbury's offense was very gimmicky, very Big 12, very spread them out. It was, bubble screens and RPOs and this, that, whatever. I don't think that that's the offense that they're going to run now in Washington with David Blau. The other reason I really like David Blau is I like guys, call me biased, I like guys that were quarterbacks. I think that they just see the game in a different way. I think they're able to communicate with their quarterback. Now, I know Cliff Kingsbury was a quarterback. Stop texting. I get it. But I like the fact that he's going to run a more traditional offense, that he was a quarterback recently in the NFL. I mean, I remember just a few years back, he was dotting up the Bears on Thanksgiving. Like, I remember those David Blau memories. I do think that this is going to be a very different style offense for the Commanders, but I think it's for the better. I also think, he talked about wanting to prioritize Terry McLaurin. Get your good players the ball. That's a generally well understood good philosophy in the NFL. So I'm excited for him. I think Jaden Daniels is going to be able to shake off some of the gimmicky kind of rap that he had from his rookie year, where, like I said, it was a lot of bubble screens, it was a lot of RPOs, read options, college level offense, if you will. This is a guy who is going to help the Commanders to I think take the next level.
I'm gonna be honest with David Blau. Uh, I think the approach, based off of what we've heard of more running the football, I really disagree with it. I really do. You
Mm.
have a quarter. It goes against what I was just praising Declan Doyle for. You don't bring in a system and then hope your guys can adapt. You have a franchise player in Jaden Daniels. You build your offense in the way Jaden Daniels wants it to be played, right? You are not going to have Jaden Daniels go under center. If you do that, you are being sacrilegious. Next, you're going to be telling Tom Brady to go ahead and run QB draw. Don't do it. It's just not right. Jaden Daniels is a spread quarterback, and maybe you want him to be something else, but then you shouldn't take the Commander's job. It's just that simple. He is a spread passer. That's what he is. You can't make him into something that he's not, right? And hey, maybe you could try and develop him, but I'm not trusting you as a first year coordinator to completely revamp the play style of a young quarterback. I'm just not trusting you to do that, especially as he's coming off an injury.
We talked so much last week about how under center in the NFL is back, right? We talked about the touchdown percentage disparity between the under center and shotgun. Why can't Jaden Daniels be an under center quarterback? He
It's just not a
hasn't been.
skill set.
Well, we don't think it's his skill set because he didn't run it in college and he didn't run in the NFL. Who's to say Jaden Daniels can't be a pristine pocket passer from under center with the ability to take off and run at will? I think one of the really, really great qualities of Jaden Daniels is his deep ball, right? I think that is a quality. Like, yes, you could say, oh, spread him out, run him deep, whatever. But I think a lot of times from under center, we're going to see, I think, an element to his game of play action that we haven't seen, where we're going to have
And I think there's
crossers
a
and we're
reason
going
we
to
haven't seen that. I
what?
like. I think there's a reason we haven't seen that. You look
I
at
think
his
it's Cliff. I
college
think
tape.
Cliff's the reason that we haven't seen
Well,
that.
no, well, I think you look at his college tape and you see a certain quarterback that did certain things very well, and all those things fit perfectly in a spread offensive unit. He did a very good job with the deep ball. I'm not disagreeing with that, but you're still able to get that element without the play action game. He isn't someone who wants to turn his back towards the defense. He's just not comfortable doing that type of stuff. He's not. And again, maybe you're able to develop him into doing that, but then let's just land any quarterback with any coordinator because they couldn't develop. No, here's the reality. Quarterbacks play best when they do what they're comfortable doing. And David Blau, if he really is going to go the direction that sounds like he's going to go, that is not ideal for the development of Jaden Daniels, who already proved he could do what he was doing at a very high level. Why do you need the play action element? That offense was good
I
enough to
think
get them to the NFC Championship, and they were so much weaker then. They're able to add more talent here.
I think, and I'll transition out of this not because I think I'm just going to spin my wheels, but I think that offense that they were running with Cliff had a shelf life, and the more that they ran it, I think the more film that's on him, the more that defensive coordinators are able to adjust. I don't know that offense is as multiple as an under center centric offense like David Blau is going to run. I think the kind of the one read, two read, whatever the stuff he was doing, split the field in half, yada yada. I don't know that offense is the best for sustained long term success in the very immediate future, and in the past, obviously, yes, it has been, but if we're going 2, 3, 4 years down the line, which we assume Jane Daniels is going to be a commander for a long time, this is, I think, the best for his long-term development kind of with this offense. And it's not an offense that I think is subject to the collapse that a lot of those type of offenses are accustomed to.
Yeah, but what's the example? What's the example
Cliff
of
in
how spread
Arizona.
offenses? Huh? Well,
Cliff in
in
Arizona.
Arizona, they never had an NFC Championship caliber team, and
No,
that
they
wasn't
didn't,
just Jaden.
and
And
Washington
I
really
could
didn't
argue
either, if we're
Kyler
being
Murray was
honest.
at
But
fault.
um, but
Well,
I mean,
they they were a flawed team, and they made it to the NFC Championship based off of just Jaden Daniels. Let's be honest. Because of Jaden Daniels, they got that far. Why do something that's going to make him play worse or have that little learning curve? I just don't see the benefit. You're saying it lasts longer, but I don't see why it would last longer. right? I get it. The reputation that spread offenses had. But now we saw Mahomes pick the league apart for years operating a spread offense. We've seen a lot of kind of one-dimensional, and not no one's really one-dimensional in the NFL, but less complex offenses dominate for extended periods of time in this league. Why is Jaden Daniels in a spread offense such a huge exception? Like it's not 2010. We know spread offenses can work year to year to year in the
Yeah.
NFL.
Well, we if you have Mahomes and Andy Reid, they could work, right?
But is Jaden Daniels not the elite caliber quarterback? Like the Lamar Jackson style offense, is that some offense we think is going to last absurdly long?
I mean, no. That's why they have a new offensive coordinator. You know what I mean? Like that's part of the reason. Uh, Todd Monken probably had the most success, but the Greg Roman thing, it was on
Should we
fire for a
stop
year or
having
so,
Lamar
and then
Jackson run?
what's up?
Should we start putting Lamar Jackson under center and tell him to stop running? Like
No.
certain stuff works. Right?
I mean, I also think the other point is if we're gonna, I mean, we're spending a lot of time talking about David Blau, but the other point is like, dude, Jaden Daniels, one of the gripes about him, and we saw this last year, he is injury prone. He was in college, he's been in the NFL. I think keeping him out of harm's way as much as possible is good. Now, there's always
By
that
getting him
fine balance.
closer to the defensive line
There,
under center.
well,
Yeah,
I'm saying
like-
running a less college style offense in general, right? I want less read options. I want less him scrambling out and trying to break contain at the end. I want like stuff like that. And again, there's always a fine line of you want your quarterback to be an athlete, but you also don't want your quarterback getting hurt. How do you draw that line? And that's a conversation we could spend 5 hours on for sure. But I don't know. I think a change. My argument boils down to I think a change was what is welcome in Washington. That's my kind of synopsis.
We'll see. One last guy that I want to talk about, sticking in the NFC East, we got to talk about a defensive guy now. Christian Parker going to Dallas, the DB coach from Philly. The Philly young DBs have been outstanding, right?
Yes.
Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, unbelievable. Dallas is very weak in the secondary. They need someone that could coach these guys up, right? We saw some young talent start to develop towards the end of last year a little bit in Dallas. Now let's see if Christian Parker could take them to that next level. Parker doesn't reinvent the wheel. He's not some schematic genius, at least not as far as we know. He was just a DB coach. But there's a reason that the Eagles had a very predictable system. I mean, they didn't send crazy blitzes at you. They didn't disguise coverages like crazy. They just ran their split field coverages. They just ran cover six. They ran match quarters. Like that's what they did. They didn't mix it up. They didn't confuse you. They were just so well coached at what they were specifically doing that they were able to beat you even when you knew a certain coverage was coming. And when you're able to do that, I mean, that's kind of the D'Amico Ryans Houston Texans effect, right? They don't beat you on the whiteboard. They just beat you.
Jimmy's and Joe's.
And Christian Parker is going to do exactly that for the Dallas Cowboys. It might be a little bit of a process, but I really do trust him as a defensive coach. I don't think he's some elaborate play caller. I just think he's simply good at the job.
Yeah. Hard not to be worse than Matt Eberflus. I mean, let's just call it out. It's hard to be worse than Matt Eberflus. No, I like that. I think it seems like with all the talk about offensive coordinators, it's good to highlight one of the new defensive coordinators coming in. Obviously, the Cowboys are a team that last year their defense was just horrendous, just horrible. So there is a level of like I said, couldn't be worse than Matt Eberflus, but also it is interesting because one of the big things with the quality of defensive backs in Dallas, I think it deteriorated when Al Harris left. Al Harris now in Chicago, so getting another guy in there who is a DB whisperer like he was in Philly, I think is going to be a good thing for Dallas. But that's going to pretty much do it for this episode, guys. We talked about coordinators, Tua, the Dolphins, free agency. Again, there's going to be a couple more episodes previewing free agency before we get into free agency come March. But this was, I think, another good episode. I think this is our best episode so far. We rambled pretty good. But that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in next week's episode.